Our reporter Khayelihle Khumalo joins us now from Pretoria. Well, good afternoon, Khayelihle. Can you tell us more about the National Russia Day in Pretoria, particularly as we know that there's still some heavy fighting in Ukraine as we speak?
Well, precisely, Nati. It's quite a very significant day in Russia because obviously it goes back to the early 90s where we saw the birth of the Russian Federation. But also we've seen quite a number of messages of support to mark this day from across the globe, especially those countries that are perceived to be sympathizing with Russia, the likes of North Korea, where we saw, of course, their leader Kim Jong-un really just encouraging Russia to continue on its path. But joining us now is, of course, the press attaché here in, of course, Pretoria from the diplomatic mission, Alexander. So the importance of this day, Alexander, let's just look at the significance of today. What does it mean for the Russians?
Well, the 12th of June, this is when the day when we commemorate the Russia's National Day. The original date comes back to the 90s, if to be more precise, in 1990, when on the 12th of June 1990, the Russian Soviet Republic declared its independence and sovereignty. So this is one of the most important political events of post-Soviet era. But today the celebration is broader than was originally when we started celebrating it in 2002. Today we celebrate the unity of our nation, our rich traditions of the peoples of Russia, our culture, our identity, if I may put it that way, and our historical legacy. So it's a much broader celebration. We celebrate Russia, well, our beloved country.
And I suppose the elephant in the room will have to be the current operation in Ukraine. So far, how's that mission going? We've seen in the eastern parts the bombardment continues, the artillery just continue to dominate that part of Ukraine. Are you still proceeding with your mission? But also we've seen the U.S. talking about not sending the long-range rockets to that part of the conflict.
Well, the operation is still going, yes, so their objectives is still the same. Nobody canceled the operation, so it's just, yes, it's going on. There are still battles in the eastern part of Ukraine, around Severodonetsk and Lysychansk and city of Slavyansk. Well, not going to say how the operation is going, since I'm not from Ministry of Defense, apparently, but it's underway. So.
Just to get your response, Alexander, I mean, we've seen the U.S. lawmakers talking about now this legislation that is going to punish the African countries that are seen to be working with Russia. South Africa is a member of BRICS. What does Russia make of this particular bill? Eventually it's going to be an act, and with punitive measures.
Well, punitive measures against anyone who is not agreeing with Washington's policy seems to be, well, the new main tune of U.S. foreign policy. Unfortunately, we do not perceive it as something positive, definitely, because this is interference in domestic affairs. African states, just like any other independent state, should not be meddled with, and their foreign policy or domestic policy, for that matter, should not be determined from across the ocean. So it's not interference in domestic affairs of other countries. Well, if I may call it like an echo of neocolonial approach of Washington's current administration.
And obviously the African leaders will a Russia summit in November. What would be your message to the continent? We've seen President Putin meeting with the AU chair, Macky Sall, alongside the AU Commission chairperson, of course, Moussa Faki Mohammed. What do you make of, the support that you still continue to get from Africa, especially because there's resistance from predominantly the western part?
Well, we are grateful for any support coming to Russia's side. We value the words of support from our African friends. Well, our country and African continent are tied by the long-standing friendly relations. We are grateful that the Africans still remember those days, as we do in Russia. And Russia-Africa Summit is just one of the, if I may put it, symbols of our friendship, of our growing friendship and strengthening relations. The preparations for the new summit are underway. As far as my knowledge goes. I think it will be a successful, and yet another successful event, because the original Russia-Africa Summit was designed to re-engage on a new level with African continent based on mutual respect and mutual benefit for the nations of African continent and Russia. So this is the general line of Russia's foreign policy, to treat other states as equals. And we come as equals for this new summit, so I think it will be another chapter, another page of Russia-Africa, and as a general, as a continent, Russia-Africa, fruitful, beneficial and friendly relations.
And just before I let you go, Alexander, the world is concerned about the food insecurity, the crisis in the continent as well, that may lead to social unrest. What is the Kremlin's view about this looming food crisis, as it were?
Well, again, the West is resorting to its favorite tool, if I may put it that way, just blame Russia for everything. They're speaking about the so-called sea blockade, but Russia's officials stated on various levels, on numerous occasions, that there is no such thing as sea blockade, because the Ukrainian side just mining the ports itself, not letting the vessels go. So it's just another attempt to put blame on Russia, but the real trigger of the looming food crisis, this is a grave problem, we do understand that in Moscow. The real trigger for this looming crisis, sorry for repeating myself, are the Western sanctions against Russia, which are illegal in the first place. And now we see the devastating impact on those sanctions. So, yes, as we said before, the sanctions are not, this is a double-edged sword. And it's not a matter between, not anymore at least, between just Moscow and Washington. It's going to affect the entire world. The West was speaking about it itself, and we see the consequences. Unfortunately, the Western sanctions they have their devastating impact. But
okay, just a quick one, Alexander. We've seen others using today to speak out about the war. Others still do call it unprovoked, unjustified war. Russia's perspective on that?
Well, as we said, this is a special military operation. We call it that way for a number of reasons. First of all, that the forces we're using are limited in Ukraine. The Western media try to portray this as that Russia's outnumber Ukrainians, but this in reality is the exact opposite. Russia's forces are outnumbered in Ukraine. I can just repeat the objectives of this operation: is denazification and demilitarization, and we stand on that.
All right. Alexander, thank you so much indeed for your time. Of course, Unati, he's with the Russian Federation diplomatic mission here in Pretoria. So I can tell you this much. The guests are really streaming in, and of course, quite a number of vehicles are lined up here ahead of the festivities to mark National Russia Day here in Pretoria.
Khayelihle Khumalo reporting live to us there from Pretoria.